So, when Porter was 4 years old, he was in the back of a truck. They were up on Boulder Mountain, coming off from the sheep herd. There was a motorcycle in the back of the truck, and he wanted to get back there and ride in that real bad. Begged his dad, said okay. So a bunch of the kids got in the back. He was sitting on the motorcycle, and as he got off the motorcycle, hit a bump, flew out of the back of the truck, and got piled up pretty bad. I remember, because when I married Mrs. Taylor, Porter was probably, I haven't done the math, I got to do the math.
What year did you get married?
01?
I was like 12.
12. Well, I remember Porter way before that because his dad was my basketball coach.
I was the level.
And I told you guys something yesterday, and I think I told you it because I was embarrassed. It's something that I really regret doing. And I didn't really do it, but I was there. Porter, you remember when you were a little kid and you used to come on the bus with us?
Yeah, I remember. I remember a lot. Too much.
Too much. So his dad was our coach, and he'd ride on the bus with us, and he'd come back and talk, and we'd joke around with him a lot.
I talk too much, though. It's pretty fair.
Yeah?
I deserve what I got.
They used to, he and one of his friends, it was the other coach's kid, the kids would put him up in the racks, and I think they kind of liked it, but...
You were nicer to me, though. My friend would wear long sleeves, hoodies. Do you remember this? They'd take his sleeves and tie them around the rack so he couldn't get out. I didn't wear long sleeves, though.
Yeah. But it's amazing to me, and this is the point, the reason I told the story. It's amazing to me to think back of Porter as a little 6-8-year-old kid. At that time, he lost his use of his arm when he was 4, and his arm would dangle. And he just loved sports so much, and he loved life so much. Well, Porter was a pretty average kid. He told a story last time about, I didn't know this, about failing a class in college. And I remember him in high school. Not a great student.
No.
Not a great student. Certainly not straight A's. Not the kid who got past every test with 100%.
Well, actually, so...
Go, please.
I took college. You guys...
I'm going to have to bait you a little because he was way too humble.
Well, I have an hour with these guys.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, we got one time. So when I was in high school, I took college classes. You guys can do that here too, right?
Yeah, in high school.
So I took college Spanish. Well, I took a bunch of college classes. But in my head, I thought, like, oh, I'm an overachiever, so I don't really have to do that well in these classes. So I did, like, okay. I took them, I didn't really care about my grades, really. And then I got to college, I got to BYU. Somehow I got into BYU. It was like a miracle, because of what Weston said. I don't know how I ended up there. But I got into BYU, and they said, hey, congratulations, all your college credits transferred. So I walked into BYU, and I had like a 2.2 grade point average. I was like, oh, great, we're off to a good start. But it was like 2 years worth of credits. It was a lot of credits.
And I guess the reason we point that out, folks, is what you're going to hear from Porter here in a minute is he's done and been and seen some pretty cool things. And I think sometimes we get in our head that, hey, you know what, that's for somebody else. That's for somebody who's like smart, who got 4.0s all through school, who had this background of Ivy Leagues, who went to Africa and did service projects and had this life that's way different than mine. And I hope the point I'm trying to make right now is Porter's childhood was very, very similar to y'all's. Okay? Now, the other thing, while he gets that going, so these ones are
This is the Waker?
no, these are the Royals. But just, yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
I told him wrong, sorry. Guys.
We'll start with this slide.
Yeah. So after that, he lost the use of his arm, and I hope he tells a little more this time about how he overcame that, and how he had to work extra hard. The other thing he didn't tell you in the last one, I'm going to tell you right now. In high school, Porter played baseball. Porter was the MVP his junior year in the state of Utah. Most valuable player, best player in 1A with one arm. Great picture. What he would do, and it's something to watch. Has one arm, has a mitt on it, right? Catches the ball, flips the ball up in the air, throws the mitt on the ground, catches the ball out of the air and throws it. And he does it like that fast. It was something to see. He was a pitcher and a first baseman. He also played basketball. I played against Porter a lot, and he always beat me. He's very, very good at basketball. He's an amazing shot. Then you think, well, he's just sitting out and shooting. No, he goes inside and he scores on you. And I'm taller than him, and he still scores on me almost every time. Amazing basketball player, amazing baseball player. Spent some time at BYU, went to a school called Baylor. People should know about Baylor now, yeah? So Baylor won last night, the NCAA. Went there, and then he got a job offer for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's year 3 or year 2?
I'm going into year 5.
Year 5. Okay. He started with the Chiefs working as the personal assistant for Coach Andy Reid, which basically means he worked crazy hours, lived at Arrowhead Stadium, and did all of the very difficult tasks and got Coach Andy Reid all the stuff he needed to do to be the head coach. This is year 2 of your new position?
Yeah.
Tell us about what the new position is.
So I'm a coach now, but in NFL they have, so you have coordinators, and then you have position coaches, you coach like quarterbacks, running backs, and then they have quality control coaches. So I'm a quality control coach, but I work with the quarterbacks and the tight ends. So I spend a lot of time with like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, which we'll talk a little bit about.
Good friends with those guys. So I'm not going to talk anymore. Porter, I hope I've primed the pump enough that you don't need to brag, but make sure these kids know what you did, all right? Okay, Porter Ellett, folks.
How many of you have heard me talk before? I feel like I've talked to. Okay, good. All right, so today's going to be a little different. We switch it up a lot. But just like always, if you have questions, I'll answer them, okay? So think about what you have questions about. And I'm free to answer anything. I know, so we won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. We lost this recent one. I'll talk about both of them. The loss hurts, but whatever. It is what it is, so we got to talk about it. But to start off, I just want to talk about how different this year's been, right? 2020, kind of a weird year for everybody, right? You guys feel that? Everything's a little off. We're all wearing masks. We all have to, if you get a positive test, you have to stay away from each other so you can't hang out much. It's been a weird year, a lot of different things going on, and a lot of reasons to kind of feel down, down about life or your situation, or just because things are different. But I think it's important as we talk about this that you realize what you've gained from this experience, right? I asked the last group, how many of you guys had ever been on a Zoom call before last year, right? I hadn't been on a Zoom call, for work a little bit, but I hadn't used it hardly at all. And now I can do almost anything. So in the middle of the season, actually right before the playoffs, we played the Cleveland Browns, our first playoff game. And we played well enough during the season that we had a bye. So we had a week off. That week, I got COVID-19. I tested positive, right? So for our work, let me kind of explain that. To be able to play the season, we had to get tested every morning, right? So how many of you guys have been tested? Fair amount, right? They touch your brain, they go up in there. Yeah, that's not a fun situation, right? So we did that every single morning. Not that bad, they just kind of did a little bit in our nose. They didn't go all the way up. But we did that every day, right? So I tested positive on one of those tests the week before the playoff game. So I was at home, and I was able to do everything from home. So part of my job is I draw all the pictures for the playbook on the computer, but I drew the whole playbook for our Cleveland Brown game at home in my basement, right? So if you would have looked back a year before that, there's no way I would have thought I could do that, right? And all I did was, there were people at work who had to pick up the papers off the printer. I could print from home. I could come off the printer at work. So that's amazing, right? Stuff like that's pretty incredible. And we've learned that through this, right? I have sisters that are like, Nancy, right? I have like doctor sisters, I have pharmacist sisters, and they've learned a ton from this as well. So I think it's important as we talk about this, that you guys realize how much you've learned also through the pandemic, okay? All right. So my year started out pretty good, right? 2nd of February, 2020, we beat who do we beat? We beat the 49ers, right? We got a 49er fan over here. But we beat the 49ers, right? We have a couple. Yeah, I talked to you guys earlier and stuff. Sorry to point it out. I grew up a 49ers fan, so I know I wanted to beat them, but at the same time, it's like, oh, that's my childhood. So we won the Super Bowl. And as part of that, when you win the Super Bowl, you get a ring, right? And then if you win it, the coaches and players can get a trophy. It's just like a Lombardi trophy, but they'll make it for you. So that's over here. So when we're done, I want you guys to be able to take a look at it. You can put the ring on, right? You can look at the trophy. You can take pictures. And I want you to, you can touch it. You can hold it. I want you guys to be able to feel that, like what it is, right? Because I remember being your age, and I never thought I would ever see a Super Bowl ring, right? Like that's something I never would have imagined. And I was the biggest sports crazy kid ever. And I thought there's no way I'll ever do that. So I want you guys to be able to do it, okay? And then I want you to be able to take that and build on it. But our year started pretty good, okay? The stadium was full. We were in Miami. It was awesome. Our families came on the field, confetti, right? And then a week later we had a parade. There were over 1 million people that came to the parade, right? All on top of each other, right? So very different than what we're experiencing now. And then this next year it was a little different, right? So we had to get tested every single day, right? We didn't even know if we were going to have a season. Just like I said, we tested every single day to make it happen. We were able to have the season, but it didn't end the way we wanted it to, right? You guys know who this is on the right? Number 10 for Chiefs. Tyreek Hill. Fastest man in the world, they say. I think he's the fastest football guy in the world. I don't think he's the fastest man in the world, but he's fast. He's freaky fast. And then this is Winfield Jr. He plays safety for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We beat Tampa Bay earlier in the year, in Tampa Bay. And we didn't just beat them, we beat them bad. About like they did us in the Super Bowl. But in that game, Tyreek Hill had almost 250 yards receiving in the first quarter, yeah. And what did he do? This guy knows. So he was running away from their cornerback and he gave him the peace sign, right? He ran in for a touchdown. So at the end of the year, this guy remembered that. And as he tackled him, the game was over, he gave him the peace sign. So that's some humble pie for us. But we'll remember it. We'll remember that going into this year. But it didn't end the way we wanted it to. And it's ups and downs, right? We had a great year. We went 14-2 in the regular season. We had the greatest season in Chiefs history until we got to the Super Bowl. And it's interesting because the whole season can be a success, but if you lose the last game, it's a failure, right? So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about ups and downs and overcoming challenges and your failures and how to face them. And well, I'll talk a little bit about my own life a little more this time because I have more time. But there's 4 things I really want to kind of get through that I think can just help you guys, especially today, right, with the things we're dealing with. So the first one is make excuses or make it happen. Right, I'll talk about it a little more. I just want to introduce them right now. The second one, there's no perfect situation. The third, failure is a tool. And the fourth one is perspective is power. So we're going to cover those a little bit. So the first one, you can make excuses or you can make it happen. How many of you guys know who this is? Travis Kelce, right? What position does he play?
Tight end.
Tight end, okay. What kind of year did he have this year? You guys know? Anybody know what kind of year he had? Yeah, look at this guy. Nice. So he had the most receiving yards in NFL history by a tight end. He broke all the records. Incredible year. And it's funny because he held the record a couple of years before, and then your guy, right, Kittle, set it. So he broke that record. So Travis Kelce, I worked with him in practice, and one day he caught a ball, and I noticed he was grabbing his hand. And he's like, oh, he came over to me, and he's like, man, ouch. And I was like, what's going on? What's wrong? And he's like, my finger is it's messed up. It's dislocated. So like it would pop in and out of place all the time. And he said, I was like, well, how are you working with it? Like, are you trying to get it better? He said, well, I can't. So we practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we have games on Sunday. So Monday and Tuesday, he would try to heal it up. And then the very first time he would catch a ball on Wednesday, it would pop out of place again. So the whole season, he was playing through that, right? He was working through that. But he didn't make an excuse, right? He didn't say, hey, I'm going to sit out 4 weeks and let this heal up. Right? If he would have done that, our season it wouldn't have been good, right? We would have had a bad year because we rely on him all the time. But he didn't make an excuse. He just went out and he made it happen, right? He broke records. And I think that that's the same with us, right? We can't make excuses. We got to make it happen. And the interesting thing about the pandemic, right, is I think a lot of people who wanted an excuse, they got an excuse, right? I saw it myself. We had players who decided to sit out the season, which they had their own reasons, right? But there were some people who didn't have a very good reason, and they made an excuse. And I think that that's the same with us. I even find myself doing that sometimes, right? Oh, the pandemic. That's why I'm having a bad day. It's the pandemic, right? But you're just looking for an excuse and then you found one, right? And you can't do that in life. This is my mom. So my mom's on the left here, my dad. And I want to talk a little bit about my mom. So my mom's a very positive person. I'll share 2 stories about my mom. So we went to the Super Bowl. She was at both Super Bowls, so we made sure like she could be there and that they could get on the field and stuff after the game. But the second Super Bowl, I called her after we lost. And I was pretty sad about it, and I told her sorry, like sorry we lost and we let you down, we didn't get to celebrate on the field. And she kind of stopped me in the middle of it. She said, I never thought in a million years I'd go to a Super Bowl, right? And I thought that was interesting. And then she said, and I've gone to 2. So it's a great perspective for us, right? To look at being grateful. Here I was, like, I lost the game. It was not a good experience for us. It was not a good game. You guys watched the game? Anybody watched the Super Bowl this year? Yeah, we were terrible. We got our butts kicked. But my mom was just grateful to be a part of it. And I think that would help all of us, right? I think it would help us all to be grateful. Be glad that you could come to school, right? I know the mask's a pain, right? Doing all the stuff you got to do, it's a pain. But you get to come to school, right? You know how many people in the world would be grateful to come to school, right? Just to be here, just to have friends, and be around people. Right? I think that when we couldn't do this, right? So for the season, we couldn't meet with the players for like the whole off season, and then we barely got to meet with them during training camp. So we had been apart forever. And one of the biggest things for me was like what a gift it was to be with them. Like I never thought about that, right? But just to be with other people. So just look at the gifts and like the opportunities you have. Another thing that my mom always taught me was that I could figure things out, right? I could learn how to do things on my own. And I think we've done this before, but how many of you guys have learned to tie your shoe with one hand? Anybody learn how to do it? You did, right? The first time I came up, maybe? Okay, does anybody want to see how to do that? Yeah, maybe? Okay, come up if you want to try it, and then we'll have you come up and you can show them how it's done. You can come up here, though, buddy. What's your name? No, you're on time. Who wants to try it? A couple of you girls. You want to come up here?
I'd like to, but I don't have laces.
Oh, you can borrow mine. I'll take my shoe off. Yeah, you can borrow mine. Come on up. Yeah, you can come up too. It might smell bad though. They're not too bad. I have like basketball.
All the time for you. But,
Okay, you guys face the crowd here.
Let's go now.
You can put it on.
Do it?
Okay, yeah, so everybody untie your shoe. Okay, yeah, one hand behind the back. Can't use it. I'll let you try it. And we'll race. I think he might be faster than me, this guy. What's your name? What? Carter? Carter might be. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's kind of hard. You have the trick now. You just got to figure it out. Okay, you guys want to? Oh, you're getting close. Yeah, you can. You can use whatever you got to use. Look at that. All right, that's some flexibility right there. You guys want to see it and then try it again? You can get it? You think you got it? Yeah, nice. Yeah, nice. Okay, I'll show you how I do it if you guys want to watch and then try it again. Okay, so my mom, I couldn't tie my shoes, I was pretty old, and then I wanted a pair of Jordans, and Jordans have laces, like all of them, pretty much. So she told me if I learned how to tie my shoes, she'd give me some Jordans. So yeah, I think most of you guys got this part, right? The crossover part. So the trick is to step, if you step on it. Helps you tighten it. Yeah, you do it. Yeah, she used them out. That was good though. So I can do this for myself, but now that I have kids, I have a hard time tying my kids' shoes. So I use my mouth sometimes. Because they won't hold still. So I'm like, man, but if you bite their shoelace, they can't get away. So then I always double knot it because I don't want to mess with it. Yeah, you want to try it again? You can take my shoe and try it right there. But yeah, so my mom taught me, like, you can sit down and you can figure it out, right? She said, you don't have an excuse, basically. And she did that over and over again in my life, right? And what you'll find out, too, is a lot of people will try to make excuses for you. And I don't think they have bad intentions. I think that that's just what they do. So there's some teachers in here and some adults in here. And I would challenge you guys even, as teachers and adults, don't give kids excuses. They don't need that. Like, the worst thing that ever happened to me growing up was when people pointed out that I had a disadvantage. That was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Because then that's all I thought about, right? So like, I'd go into a game and if somebody says like, oh, if you don't succeed, it's okay, you have one arm, it's harder to do things. And then I would like play like crap. And then I'd come to the bench and be like, well, it's okay, I have one arm, right? That's not what kids need. So you guys, you can do that too, right? You can be in control of that too. If people try to make excuses for you, you can say no. Like that, no, that's not good. It's not a good excuse. I can make this happen, okay? All right, thanks guys. You can keep trying. I'm struggling. You did it? Nice. It looks good. Okay, so you can either make excuses or make it happen, right? So I encourage you guys to be the kind of people that make it happen. One of the best compliments I ever received since I've been in the NFL, my wife, sometimes they go to dinners with the other wives, coaches' wives, and she was sitting down with dinner with one of the coaches' wives, and she hadn't met him yet. And she said, oh, I'm Carly Ellett. And she said, oh, so you're Porter's wife? And she said, yeah. And the other wife said, oh, he's the guy that gets stuff done, right? So I would encourage you guys to be the people who get stuff done, right? Not make excuses. Okay, sorry, you can put that in your phone. So the second one I want to talk about is there's no perfect situation. This tree, what's it growing out of right here?
A rock.
A rock. Tree's supposed to grow out of rocks. No. Are trees supposed to be planted in rocks? No, right? Do you think this tree chose where it was planted? No, I don't think so either, right? If you were a tree, where would you choose to be planted? Dirt, right? Pretty good dirt. Probably some manure too, a little fertilizer, right? So, the tree didn't choose it though, right? But it made the best out of the situation. It grew where it was planted. And I think that we can all learn from this tree, right? You're not going to be in the perfect situation. None of us will be. You guys are fortunate here, because personally, I would consider this as close to a perfect situation as you can have, right? You have good teachers, you have a good school. This gym, man, if I had this gym growing up, I never would have gone home, right? There's a room right here, I would have slept right in that room. That's where I would have been. My parents would have known where I was all the time, too. They wouldn't have had to ask. I would have been in trouble. So, but you guys are in a good situation, and you can build on that. But a lot of us have challenges, have struggles, even though we're in a good spot. We have to deal with it. My example, Weston already talked a lot about it, right? I have one arm. That's not ideal, especially for someone who wants to play baseball or basketball. That's not the best spot. Soccer probably would have made sense. That would have been okay still. But You know, it's not perfect, but you deal with it. A good example of this is, how many of you guys know who this is? You guys know who this guy is? Tyrann Mathieu. Yeah, he's got a good nickname. What's his nickname? Wilkes, what's his nickname? You know his nickname?
It's not honey badger.
It is Honey Badger. Nice. Yeah. They call him Honey Badger. You know why they call him Honey Badger? Anybody? Because Honey Badger don't care, right? They say the Honey Badger don't care. So that's the way he plays. He plays like a Honey Badger. He doesn't care, right? He's in everybody's face. He's in everybody's business. He's all over the place. But Tyrann Mathieu, he grew up in New Orleans. And New Orleans has a place that's a pretty rough patch. It's called the Ninth Ward. And he grew up in the Ninth Ward. And when he was growing up, they had a hurricane. I asked him about it during the season because I was interested in, some of us couldn't go to school, right, for part of the year. So I asked him about what they did during hurricanes. And he said, well, they would evacuate us. We'd go somewhere else for a while, like Texas or something. Then we'd come back. And he said that at one point in his life, he didn't go to school for like a full year. He wasn't in school. And when he did go back to school, they were in temporary trailers. So not like this, right? They were in a trailer outside trying to learn. And then he didn't really have a home to go home to. And he didn't have a place to get food. So the government had these trucks that would come around and they'd hand them bag lunches for food. So he lived like that for a while. And then he ended up where he is now. So do you think he made it an excuse? No. Do you think that's the perfect situation for a guy who's going to be in the NFL? No, right? Athletes need to eat a ton of food to be the best. And he's doing it with no food, right? No home. And he couldn't even play for his school team for a year, right? But he ended up where he is now. He's an all-pro safety. He actually plays so well at so many positions that they don't even know what to call him on the field most of the time because he'll play multiple positions. So he's an incredible example of there's no perfect situation, right? But he made it the best he could. So, good example. The next one I want to talk about is failure. Oh, sorry, I think there was one before that. All right. No, we're good. Yeah, we're all right. Are we? Yeah, we're good right there. Yeah, just play the video. Go to presentation. So now we're going to talk about failure a little bit. So failure is a tool, right? And that's what I want to touch on with this video. You guys already saw it. But at the end of the video, it says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Right? In the video, it's Dwayne Wade. And he's falling down over and over again and getting back up. But failure in life, right, it's a tool. It can help us become better. It can give us strength, and as long as we learn from it. So you guys, you're going to fail in life, right? It's a given. And the one thing that I would say to each of you guys is to become comfortable with the fact that you're not going to be perfect, right? You're going to mess up. You're going to miss shots, right? You're going to make bad throws. You might even fail tests sometime, which I'll talk about a little later. But you might really struggle with things. But eventually, you can learn from those failures. You can overcome them, and you can do better, right? So that's what I kind of want to touch on now. So when I was in college, Weston talked about it a little earlier, I wasn't the best student all the time, right? In college, I studied economics because I read a book called Moneyball. You guys ever heard of that book, Moneyball? It's a baseball book. But basically, it's this guy who was at Harvard. He was a nerd, and he studied economics. And he learned how to apply what he learned in economics to baseball, so he could use it to make baseball teams better. So I decided I was going to study economics, which was hard. It was a challenge. And I got all the way through it, and I was in my last class. And I decided to take the class from the hardest professor there. So I took this class, and I was like, well, maybe I'll learn a lot from him. I took the last test, and I failed the class by like 0.3%. So I had like all my plans set up for after college. Like, oh, I'm gonna graduate this day. I'll start my job this day. Like, I had everything planned out. And then I failed that class. So now I had to go back to school. I had to start a new semester. And as part of that, I was like, well, I gotta get a job. So I was like, well, I'll apply some places. And I wanted to work in sports, right? So I tried to find a job in sports. So I ended up getting a job with this guy on the right. His name's Mick Hill. And he works in the BYU equipment room. We have any BYU fans in here? You? How about Utah State? We got some Aggies in here? Okay, a few Aggies. How about University of Utah? I like to see that. How about that? No hands up for University. No, we got a couple. Don't be ashamed. It's okay. Everybody I meet from the University of Utah I like, so not to like the school again. But so I ended up working in the equipment room, and while I was there, I fell in love with football. And I was like, man, this is a team sport. These guys get it. They understand what it's like to be on a team and to play for each other. And I fell in love with it. And I was like, man, I'd really like to work in football. And I actually went home and I told my wife, I was like, I'd like to work in football someday maybe. And she kind of thought I was crazy. She's like, yeah, you didn't play it in high school. So Wayne High School, where I went to high school, we don't even have a football team. That's part of the reason I played, baseball, basketball, and then I ran track and cross country. It was kind of all we had. So we didn't even have a football team. So it was kind of a long shot, like, you can't really work in football. So I went on from there and I worked for Goldman Sachs, this tax company, right? But eventually I ended up back in football, somehow, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit later, thanks to my wife, actually. But failure's a tool, right? You can learn it, you can take it and you can learn new things. You can build on it, you can grow. But you have to understand that you're not a failure, really, until you quit. Once you quit, then you're a failure. But as long as you keep working, you keep pushing forward, you haven't failed yet. The next one I want to talk about is perspective is power, right? So perspective is power. So Coach Reed, he's been in the NFL a long time. We'll be in meetings sometimes and we'll talk, the younger guys will try to act like we know what we're talking about. We'll try to act like we're really smart. And then Coach Reed will always come out and say, well, 20 years ago, we tried that and it didn't work. These are the reasons why it didn't work. And we're always like, oh yeah, good point, right? So he always has like a bigger perspective. He sees the whole plan. He knows what we're trying to get done as a team. And he keeps us in line. And that perspective is a gift for everyone around him, right? We all succeed because he has a better perspective than us. And that perspective in life can help each and every one of us, okay? So when I was talking about working at Goldman Sachs, my wife, she's awesome. But I came home one day and I was pretty down on myself. Maybe we'll go down. Yeah, go to the top right in my drive. Right there, the second tab on the left. Well, up above. The top right there, to the left where it says south. Up a little bit more. Up top. Go up, keep going up. Look there, yeah. You can even do the Royals one. Show a picture of my wife. That'll be good. I picked the wrong PowerPoint. That's my bad. But so my wife, I came home from work and I was working in taxes, right? And it was pretty late at night. And she said, "Do you really enjoy what you're doing?" And I was like, I like it because it takes care of our family. And it's a good thing, right? And then she said, "Well, what do you want to do? Like, what would you do if you could do anything?" And I was like, "Well, I would coach football. And I would work in football." And she was like, "Well, what do we need to do to make it happen?" And I said, "Well, I'd probably have to go back to school. I'd have to do a few things." And she said, "Well, let's do it then." I was like, "Okay." So I ended up, after BYU, I went to Baylor. And while I was there, I got a call from Coach Reed wanting me to work for the Chiefs. So she knew what my goal was, right? And she helped me see that I could still do it. Her perspective helped me do that. And because of her, a year later, once I started working for the Chiefs, she made this possible, right? My wife is the reason that I was able to do it, and she supported me in it. But it's her perspective that made the difference. And you guys have people around you who have that perspective, right? They see what you can become. My wife saw that I was capable of that, even if I didn't really see it in myself. And that's true for my whole life. I had people my whole life who saw what I could become. And you guys have that here, right? You guys have teachers, you have coaches, you have people around you that can see what you can become. So I encourage you guys to lean on their perspective, right? Lean on what they see. And then share your dreams with them, right? My wife literally forced me to tell her what I wanted to be. And she said, what do you want to be? Like, what do you want to do? And she made the answer. She didn't just like accept it, right? Because initially I was like, oh, I just kind of want to provide for our family. She's like, no, what do you really want to do? So you guys need to tell those people who have a perspective what you want to become. And they'll help you become it. And I mean, I know things are challenging, right? Everybody can make an excuse. But you got to choose not to. And then you can become that. Like if you would have told me when I was your age that I would coach in the NFL, that we would win a Super Bowl, that's a big dream. And I had a lot of big dreams. And I didn't ever really think, hey, maybe that will actually happen. But it can, right? Especially here in this community, right? You can be a farm kid and you can make things happen, right? You can go out, you can do what you want. It doesn't matter, right? So I want to kind of open it up for questions for you guys, if you have any. And I'll tell like some fun stories. If you have questions about like the team or players, I'm cool with that too. Like whatever you have. Got one down back there? Your head was like, well, that was funny. I could only see your hand when you said that.
Is Patrick like nice?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I mean, I bet you guys have like Instagram and stuff, a lot of you. So yeah, he's really nice. Pat's like awesome. And he's funny because he like, I don't know how to explain it. He like notices everything. That's what makes him like such a good quarterback, is he like notices everything around him. But he'll point out things that like I do with one hand. He'll be like, oh, I saw that. I saw what you did there. But he's very like normal. And I mean, he got paid a lot. They paid him $500 million or whatever. He hasn't changed at all. Like this Christmas, he gave us like Christmas gifts, and he gave the coaches like luggage, because he's like, I noticed your bags will be up. So like just little things like that where he's really cool. So no, he's a good guy. He's a really good guy.
Before you lost your arm, were you right-handed or left-handed?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I was right-handed until I was 4, and then left. So I don't know how much I had to like learn again, but I had to learn quite a bit. I mean, my sisters probably remember that better than I do. So you can go quiz down Mrs. Taylor later on.
Does Patrick make bets to cut off his hair?
Does he make bets to cut off his hair? Not since I've been with him. I might have to challenge him on that though. It's become like part of who he is. So I don't know if he ever cut his hair. I'm going to do that though. I'll bet him that. If he loses, we'll shave that off. He couldn't get it cut during the playoffs, which I remember was a big deal. So he looked pretty raggedy during the Super Bowl.
Do you really like ketchup?
Does he really like ketchup? Yeah, that's no joke. Yeah, he eats ketchup on everything. He really likes ketchup. But he doesn't, so like, he's in a commercial now for Hunt's ketchup. His favorite ketchup is actually, in Texas they have a restaurant called Whataburger. His favorite ketchup is Whataburger ketchup.
So I watched a video on YouTube about you, and is it true that when you went to the MTC that you had to feed your calves too?
Yeah, good question. So, how many of you guys like live on a farm? Like you feed cows? Okay. How many of you guys that don't live on a farm help on a farm? Okay, yeah. So all my friends that didn't live on a farm helped on a farm. So I had my dad to help me make money for college and my mission. He would go get the calves from dairies that like they didn't need, and then I would feed them, and then I'd sell them to make money. But before I left on my mission, I was bottle feeding 41 calves. So that's how I made my money for my mission. And then actually so this is a good reminder too. So when you guys have tough days, I think it's good to remember back on like other challenging experiences and how you faced them. So when I was a missionary, I would have a tough day. I would always remember the last day I was home. And I was feeding all my calves, and I had like all the milk mixed perfectly. I had just the right amount of milk. So I didn't want them to waste any money, waste any milk. And all the calves kept popping the nipples off the bottle. So I like had to go back and mix up all the milk again. And then I went back out there and they did it again. So I was like in the corral, I was so mad. I was like throwing bottles and I was kicking and I was so mad. So when I had a tough day on my mission, I always thought back to like that day. I was like, man, I could be back there feeding those calves. I don't want to do that, so I'll just stay out here. So I think it's good for you guys, especially because you guys do a lot of work, right? You guys know what hard work is. And there's a lot of days, Weston mentioned it in the last group, sometimes I'll work 20 hours one day, then I'll come back and I'll work like 19 and a half. So if that, I don't know how you, so if that, based on numbers, so I get up, that means I get up at 5 a.m. and then I'm done working at 1 a.m. That's a 20-hour day. And then the next day I'll get up at 5 a.m. and I'll work till midnight or 12:30. That's Tuesday and Wednesday for NFL football coaches.
I don't want this to escape your attention, folks. I hope what you draw from today is that I think a lot of times we look at people who have gone, as an example, have gone to the NFL, won a Super Bowl trophy, and they're like, holy cow, they just must be amazingly smart, must have had this perfect situation that allowed them to go there. And I hope what you're getting today is that no, Porter's had a ton of challenges, a ton of obstacles, failed classes, had to go back for another trimester, done it all with one arm, working 20-hour days. It's effort, it's grit, it's getting back up in the video we watched, getting back up every time you're knocked down, not making an excuse, not having a pity party, not becoming this victim of my circumstance, coming up with all these reasons why I can't. Porter has always been able to get up and say, no, I'm going to do this.
So can you talk to Patrick like a friend, or is it always got to be like work?
No, yeah, we have like a text chain. I don't know, it's my dad. I don't know. We have like a text chain that we talk on all the time. Like I give him, so he went to Texas Tech. He went to Texas Tech, and I went to Baylor, and they don't get along very well. So I give him crap about that all the time. So we joke around and we send texts to each other, like funny videos and stuff. So, yeah, good question.
Do you ever get auditory phantom, phantom pains?
Yeah, good question. He asked about phantom pain. So that's when you feel your arm even though it's not there. And yeah, I did, especially right after I got it cut off. And I still have like pain sometimes, but there were weird things where like it would itch. I could get an itch, and then I would reach down and scratch wherever it was and it'd go away. Just like weird stuff like that. But no, it's the real thing, yeah.
Team makes more mistakes.
Which player on the team makes the most mistakes? That's a good question. I don't really want to throw anybody under the bus, but mostly wide receivers. No, just kidding.
Where'd you go on your mission?
Yeah, good question. I went to Los Angeles, California, so, and I learned Spanish, so a bit of Spanish.
Do you like Tom Brady or is Patrick better?
That's a good one. So my mom, I didn't mention this, but my mom's a big Tom Brady fan. So there was it was funny, my first year, not my first year, my second year in the league, we played them, somehow we ended up playing Tom Brady every year. And usually like twice, because we played in the playoffs. But my mom had gone to New England and she'd watched us play the Patriots my first year. And then my second year, she was going up there too, but we do something every year where we get to take our wives on a away trip. So I kind of told my mom, like, my wife's going to this game, so I won't be able to see you. Like, we won't be able to talk before or after the game very much. And she was like, that's fine. I'm not going to see you. I'm going to see Tom Brady. So, fair enough. No, Tom Brady is, it's hard to argue he's like the greatest ever. You know, like he can't really argue that. But Patrick is working on becoming that. So that's the goal.
All right, so Porter, you work with, you're working in the NFL, which is way up here, right? I mean, it's the elite. But even amongst the elite, there's even more elite. So what are the qualities that you see that separate the good from the best?
Question. So, I mean, like you're saying too, in the NFL, everybody's gifted. Right? Everybody's like talented. So I think that a lot of times it's how much
discipline they have is what really separates the greatest from the great. Like what makes Tom Brady like great amongst the greats is his discipline and the way he trains, the way he eats, the way every part of Tom Brady's life is discipline. I'd say discipline is the big key.
Can you give me Patrick Mahomes' number?
No. That's a good question. You gotta ask, right?
I saw in the presentation, I saw that the coach had like a flyer with like different colors. What is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I used to, when Weston was talking about my job before, I used to make that. He's talking about. You're talking about that right there? Yeah, so that's what they call a call sheet. So everything that our offense is going to do for that game, as far as plays, is on that sheet. So we break it down based on situation and what we want to call. So that's what that is. But that was part of my job. I used to put that together for him. So.
What are your feelings on motivation?
My feelings on motivation? Well, so I think everyone should be self-motivated. That would be my, is that what you're meaning? Like my thoughts on motivation? But I think that you can grab from other people those motivations, but you have to understand that it's no one else's job to motivate you, right? So the head coach for the UConn Huskies, women's basketball, he's won a bunch of national championships and everything. He talks about when his players show up the first day, he always says, it's not my job to motivate you, right? If I have to motivate you, you're in the wrong room. And he basically just tells them, if I need to motivate you and like talk to you and have you encourage you to work hard, that you're not going to be on this team. So I've always thought that same thing. I've thought you're in charge of your own job, right? You're in charge of your own success and what you become. Now, you're lucky if there's people around who do want to motivate you and do want to push you. And I think you should be grateful for that, right? People that want to push you. But at the end of the day, you should be in charge of motivating you. Good question.
Did you ever hand wrestle Patrick Mahomes? Did you ever arm wrestle Patrick Mahomes?
No, I've never arm wrestled. I have caught passes from him, but never arm wrestled him. You got one more like that? How are we doing okay on time?
Who gets the most injuries on the Chiefs team?
Position-wise, it's probably all the defensive backs, like safeties and corners and stuff. Individual players, I don't know. It's like hit or miss. It's luck, a lot of it.
Okay.
Can you ride a bike?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I can ride a bike. I like riding a bike a lot. I really enjoy that. And then a lot of people ask about swimming too. I like to swim a lot. I enjoy that. I mean, a lot of that stuff growing up, if I just kind of went with my mom and said like, hey, I want to do this. She's like, okay, let's figure it out. But then I had older sisters that were like always in swim lessons or like always running or always riding bikes. So they kind of carried me along.
Porter, there's a great fence story. Tell them the fence.
Oh yeah, the fence. So I had a lot of friends that, they were playing. Of course, all my friends have two arms because they're normal. They climbed over a fence and they were like playing in the other side of the fence, and I couldn't get over the fence. I couldn't figure it out. So I came back to my mom and asked for help, and my mom was like, "You just figure it out. You got to figure it out. You got to learn to do it on your own." And I was like, ah. And there were actually other people there. There were other adults there, and they kind of got mad at my mom for doing that. But she was like, "You got to figure it out. You got to learn how to do it." So I went over there and tried, and then I finally figured it out and got over the fence. But I thought my mom, her wisdom, right, and letting me struggle and figure it out, that was a big step in helping me be successful in the future as well. So learn to do that as well. Figure things out on your own. Don't always let people just do it for you.
Okay, guys, we got to get back to class. I hope that the message hasn't been lost in the stories. every one of us has difficult things going on in our lives. Every one of us has some challenges. And we can choose to make an excuse and become a victim and give up and say, well, it's not my fault, I can't do something. Or we can choose to succeed and keep getting up every time we're knocked down. We're in a tough time right now, I think, right? But I think there's some opportunities to grow, and any one of us can go do something great with our lives. Okay, Porter, you're going to do something with this trophy, yeah, as we leave?
Yeah, so just as you walk out, I mean, we can do it in order. Teachers, if you want to do it in order. You guys can you can put the ring on, whatever, touch the trophy, hold the trophy, take pictures, I don't care. But let's just do it kind of orderly so it's not a mess. But